imagine things before we get into sort of the main content, what I want to chat to you about this. But just for a bit of context, because inevitably over 6 weeks, you get some people that can make some of the sessions that aren't made. So just a little bit of explanation about a few things to help you. The first week, as a little reminder of where we've been, we looked at the journey, didn't we, behind which a person comes to faith, and how actually the whole journey thing is a biblical thing, actually. And we looked at yes, how we may be, and how we can interact with that. We looked at relevant words, pairing, action, spirit, empowered, and we even just touched a little bit about how we need to walk right with the Lord and giving our best shot. If you didn't get those, then there's two things you can do. Number one, as many people did who were at it, there's actually a book that says a lot more than what we covered on that first night, but there's actually a book that I wrote which covers that with a study guide if you wanted to study it. And if you want to get a refresher, for those of you who were at week one, or for those of you who weren't at week one, would like to get a rough idea of the talk. It's not exactly the same, but it's a rough idea. You can do one of two things. Number one, you can go to the elim.org.uk/partnerships. And if you scroll around on those web pages, you'll see two things that I've done called National Evangelism Vision Part 1 and National Evangelism Vision Part 2. So that's one place you can go and look at it. You can also go on, if you're more inclined to YouTube, you can go on the Elim Pentecostal Church National YouTube channel, and you can put in the search the same things. Or you can also go on the elim.training.online. If you put Elim Training online, then you can access it through there, and that's all free. So there's three places that you can access it. My recommendation would be to go on the website, because there's a whole bunch of stuff there you can actually watch. That's all free as well. So that's the first thing. That's the week one. And then for the past 3 weeks, and then this week is 4 weeks that we've done called the boot camp. So that's more about how we personally share our faith. That's what we've been looking at tonight. We're going to be looking at some guidelines to help us sensitively help people to become Christians, and how we can help them in those early stages. And that's what we've been looking at, particularly in the last 3 weeks and this week, personal evangelism. Now, here's some more free stuff. What am I doing?
Wow.
What am I doing?
Wow.
So, if you go to my website, revmarkgreenwood.com/shop, all the books that I've got are all available to buy on there. Obviously, you pay postage and packaging, which, how expensive is that these days? It's just gone up again in October, it's frightening. But if you go on there, then you can access two things. Number one, you can access some free MP3 downloads, which are basically these sets of talks about the boot camp. And they're MP3 downloads. They're free. Okay, and they work with this book as well. So for a couple of you that haven't managed to get to all the sessions, if you wanted to catch up, then you can do so by, you can use your book and you can access those there. The books, if you haven't got one, if you want one, they're £3. You can just come and pay in the break. And that covers all of those 4 things called boot camp. If you wanted to look at a shortened version of this course, like a little headline thing, there you can also get that for free. So generous. And that's also on my website, revmarkgreenwood.com. That's called Bootcamp Light. Bootcamp Light. And you buy all of those for 0 money. And you get a link, and that link takes you to a drive, and in that drive, you've got 4 videos, approximately 30 minutes, and that's the sort of headlines of these subjects. They're audio-visual files, so you can watch and listen, whereas the previous ones were just MP3s that you can listen to. You get a number of other things in there, a little downloadable digital manual as well, in case you wanted to go through that again. Also on that website, there's a talk called Reason to Believe, 5 talks called Reason to Believe. Is it reasonable to believe the Bible? Is it reasonable to believe in a God you can't see? Is it reasonable to believe in a God of love in a world of suffering? Is it reasonable to believe you can just do what feels right? And is it reasonable to believe that Christianity is right? Now, last week, when we were looking at handling the objections and the objectives of the gospel, which we focused, didn't we, our attention more around the person asking the questions, and I encourage you to read stuff. Well, these Reason to Believe talks give you lots of answers, so they're free also. You can get those from redmarkgreenwood.com/shop. So loads of free resources for you, genuinely free. You won't be having to mailing list and be playing forever and a day or anything like that. It's genuinely free resources that help you become more effective in your evangelism. So tonight we're going to be looking at how you can lead a person to Christ. And then next week we're going to be focusing more around how we can pray for our friends that don't know Jesus. So some tips on that, and we might do a little bit of praying as well. And there'll be some more resources that I'll bring next week, and they're free as well. Okay. Now, with all that talking free, I'm feeling it. So let me talk about something that isn't free, which will make me feel a lot better. So I'm from Yorkshire, and we don't like giving things away for free. In Yorkshire, you don't know, right? Oh, well, you'll know that then, won't you? Okay. The first thing any Yorkshire person says when you mention a prize is, "Ow, what?" So, okay. So, a couple of things we've been mentioning each week. Again, I'm aware that some people haven't been at each one. So I will mention this. This is my Christmas book. Do you want a little bit of good news? I'm so excited. Honestly, I'm a little bit blown away. So these arrived on about the 4th or 5th of September, and I've just taken delivery. So we got 5,000 were printed. I've just taken delivery of another 5,000. So, and I've got some orders on which I need to fulfill. So I've ordered another 5,000, and they came. So isn't that exciting? I'm really, really buzzing about it. And yeah, anyway, so if you would like to buy one of these, it's all about how Jesus is for life, not just for Christmas. And it's a light-hearted, conversational, coffee table dipping and dip out style of read, with each little double page spread, a standalone spread illustrated by an award-winning illustrator, and the words by me. And I think they're quite good, you know. No, I do say so myself. Well, me and my mum didn't so anyway. But she's got the bit, so hasn't she? So for one copy, full colour throughout, £4 for one copy. But if you want to buy 10, we'll drop it down to £3 each, so you can get 10 for £30. So that's that. And then this one here, and all of these three here, we've already mentioned this one. This is the gospel. Really unpacked, really explored, really applied, and it's rammed full of testimonies. This is quite a good book for tonight's subject as well, because it's a brilliant way. Is if you get in conversation with somebody and they're not quite ready to become a Christian, you can send them away with something to explore and think through more. And it's got prayer for salvation in the back as well. It's also got some QR codes to different things like those 5 Reasons to Believe talks that people can snap with their phones. So that's that one at £4. And then this one here is called the Journey Book. And this is for people who are very, 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 very close to becoming a Christian. or they just become a Christian. Sometimes they can almost look like they are a Christian because they might start praying, read the Bible, coming along to church. I've seen that happen loads. And so this book here, I'll mention a little bit more about that as we go through the evening. But this book just contains some really good stuff. Again, full of testimonies, but also what's really cool about this is at the end of each section, there's a QR code. And that QR code, for those of you who are familiar, is that with a phone, a smartphone, or an iPad, or a tablet that's got that facility, and it takes the person who's reading it to, I think it's 10 videos. I think it's 10 videos. Little videos that some friends of mine have shot on their iPhone, in their kitchen, in their lounge. And let's say that like one subject is power for living, the Holy Spirit. So those 10 videos will be things that those people have learned about the Holy Spirit. But those same 10 people do them all the way throughout. So one's on prayer, one's on reading the Bible. So that's quite a nice little touch. That might be something that blesses you as well, to be honest with you. So that's the journey. And then this book here, Mark's Gospel. So, to tell you a story. I mean, you might as well say, yeah, because I'm going to do it anyway. Right? But let me tell you this story, true story. They've divorced now, but my sister-in-law, her husband, was very, very wealthy man, made his money through marketing and design. Very, very good guy. And he said to me one day, a statement which I part agreed and part disagreed with, but I thought it was an interesting comment. And he said to me, Mark, the thing about the church is you've got the most famous brand in the world, but you've got the worst marketing department. And I said to him, okay, so the bit that I agree with you is we are the worst marketing department. Okay, sometimes we're not good at all. I said, but I don't really see God as a brand. But I'm not going to split hairs because I understand what you're saying. And then he said, take the Bible, for example. You claim it's the word of God and it's dynamic, don't you? I went, well, we do. Yeah, he said, well, it doesn't look like it. And now he'd only had a limited view of the Bible. And in fact, even since then, that was 20 years ago, we had that conversation. Even since then, a lot of work's been done, hasn't it, on making the Bible more dynamic, making it more attractive, more engaging, rather than it just being loads of words on a big thick book. So I came away from that. I thought, right, I'm onto it, and I got a bit giddy, and I got a bit excited. I thought, right, I'm gonna do the Bible, but I'm gonna not redo it. That's it's what we call heresy. Okay? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get it all redesigned, make it look really fantastic. And then I thought, it's quite a lot of work in it, it's massive, isn't it? So I thought, right, let's just go with New Testament. And then I sat down and thought, that's quite a lot of work as well, to be honest with you. So I thought, let's just go for one of the Gospels, which is the shortest, Mark. So I've done Mark's Gospel, wow. All right, but this cost me a lot of money anyway. So what I did is I got permission. I always found it weird, don't you, that you've got to get permission to use the Bible. Feels a bit, anyway, don't get me going with that. I'm not going to say who weren't so generous. I'm going to tell you who were very generous. Tyndale. And they licensed me to use the New Living Translation, and they only charged me a small amount of money for ones that I sold, and then even a smaller amount of money for ones that were given away. They've got to make some money. I look back at Tyndale, it's all the money they make goes into mission and evangelism. So we can cope with that, can't we? So this is the New Living Translation. What I basically did is I took a chapter, so there's 16 chapters in Mark's Gospel. At the beginning of every chapter, I got a testimony in there of somebody and how they found that the Bible's helpful. Did you know? Well, you didn't because you weren't there when I did it, but I think it was 5 people in here, I think it's 5, became Christians through reading the Bible. Now, I'm going to confess something to you. I hope you don't disappoint me when I confess it. It was a bit shocked. I shouldn't issue that really. It's like the Bible, isn't it? It's like God's word. So it made me realise the Bible is getting people to read it, isn't it? That's the challenge. So, beginning of each chapter, just a very short bit about how the Bible's helped people, and then we'll go through some things, and I've got some little did you know facts to sort of spruce it up, and then a little question at the end. What do you think about that thing that they've read about? And then where you've got like little religious words in there, for example, we've got a little insight feature here where I highlighted a little bit here and explained it there. So when there's words like sin and repentance, I just explain what they are. And then I've got 3 little sections where I explain the gospel message in a feature called, ready for this, Mark on Mark. Genius, isn't it? Absolute genius. Okay, so so basically we did Mark's gospel, and I'm super chuffed with it. It looks really nice all the way through, full colour, and with loads of people have read it, and there's a whole bunch of chapters, different testimonies in there from a bunch of different people, different backgrounds, and how the Bible's helped you, including David Suchet and Luke Poirot, who became a Christian through reading the Bible, the book of Romans in particular. And then we've also got Fabrice Muamba. Do you remember Fabrice Muamba? The guy who had what was it? It was a type of yeah, it was the Catholic press, wasn't it, on the field? And then Lady Elizabeth Berridge, who was the youngest ever peer in the House of Lords, and then a lady called Beverly Trotman, back in the day, X Factor finalist. If you've been an X Factor fan, you'll remember Beverly Trotman, and they gave permission. So they put their little testimonies in there as well, which is fabulous, isn't it? It's just back to week 2 of our course, when we looked at week 1 of the boot camp. It's about getting people's attention, isn't it? That's all it is. It doesn't mean that Fabrice's testimony or David Suchet is any better than ours. It's just that maybe people might read those names and go, oh, that's interesting. Whereas if they read Mark Greenwood on the front, they probably wouldn't. So that's why they're in there. So that's Mark's Gospel. And I'll explain the context of these, but I just wanted to take a bit of time to go through those. And as I say, we'll explain the purpose of particularly 2 of those products. So guidelines on leading a person to Christ. I've heard some horror stories, I'm sure you have, of people who have been to hospital and had an operation and not been very well looked after. I'm sure you'll have had those. I came across this in a medical journal a few years ago. It said things you don't want to hear in surgery. Now, I maintain I don't want to hear anything in surgery, quite frankly. I want to be out cold, don't you, when I'm having surgery. I had a heart attack when I was 49, and I could feel them putting the thing going up here, and I was like, oh, I don't like it at all. So, yeah, I don't do that. But things you don't want to hear in surgery. This was in a medical journal. So here it's things you don't want to hear in surgery. Someone called the caretaker, we're going to need a mop. You don't want to hear that either in surgery. Definitely not. What else do we look to hear? Hey, there's big money in kidneys, and this bloke's got 2 of them. You definitely don't want to hear that. One reactivity and that, oh, here we go, final one. Oh, it's page 40% of the manual is missing. You definitely don't want to hear that. Don't want to hear those things. Why read me those? Well, I think we need to understand that at the time when somebody who's very close to becoming a Christian, and in many ways, when a person puts their hand up in a meeting, it's often not the time that they've decided in here. It's just that they've gone public on it. Some people do. For some people, it is they decide. They might hear an evangelistic talk and feel convicted and challenged. But often, particularly on this journey thing that we've been looking at, sometimes when a person makes a commitment to become a Christian, it's like the final little yes. It's like the final decision. They've kind of started to accept a number of different things. They finally arrived at a point where they just they sort of tip over, really. They just say, yeah, I'm going to finally make a commitment. And sometimes it's really interesting when I've been preaching the gospel, and I know the people that are present, sometimes people tell me who's there, who isn't a Christian, and you're preaching the gospel, and you can see somebody that you know isn't a Christian, and they're nodding all the way through, and then you think, well, when I make the appeal, they're definitely going to put their hand up, and you make the appeal, put your hand up, and they don't. It's like, oh, I don't understand it. But sometimes it just takes a while, doesn't it? It just takes a while. But what I honestly believe, and I don't understand a lot about spiritual warfare. I don't read lots on it. I tend to focus a lot more on what I'm supposed to be doing. I've kind of learned that lesson in life, that I'm going to have to focus on what I'm meant to be focusing on, let alone reading loads of other stuff. So, you know, I know a lot of stuff about what I'm supposed to do, but I don't know lots of stuff about everything. But what I think I do know, and what I think I have seen, is that I really felt God show me that in terms of that moment and around that season when a person was kind of deciding to follow Christ, there's never a more intense moment of spiritual activity in the heavenly realms than at that moment. I think that's as intense as it gets. And I think we need to make a real commitment if we're serious about helping somebody to become a Christian. I think we need to make a real serious commitment to say, do you know what? I'm going to walk with them. I'm going to walk with them. Because do you know what? I've been a Christian now since I was 12 years old. I'm 53 currently. That's 41 years. And I still need some Christians around me to keep me going, don't you? So if that's true for us, how much more true is it going to be for somebody who's in the very early stages, the very baby stages of their Christian faith? And so I don't subscribe to that crazy thing that people say sometimes, that if it's genuine, it won't last. I don't subscribe to that, because I think we've got to walk with people. I think we really, really do. And so with that in mind, just a quick reminder that it's a journey. Let's remember that process by which a person comes to faith. For those of you who weren't here on the second week when we unpacked this, if you download those boot camp talks, and on session 1, we talk a lot about this angle scale. So I'm not going to say it again, because I don't want to go over stuff I've already gone over. But you can read it. You can Google Engel scale, ENGLES, Engel scale. Professor Engel, 1975, said that there's a journey by which a person comes to faith, and a process by which a person comes to faith. So I put that up on the screen just as a reminder, really, again, that as we are helping somebody to become a Christian, let's not get too giddy about the fact that they want to become Christians and forget about the journey thing. Let's do it understandingly, and that's what this session is going to be. So I think the first question we need to ask ourselves is it the right time for a person to become a Christian? Romans 10:9 says this: if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart God raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. Now, I think there's two really, really interesting phrases in this, which I've just highlighted. Confess with your mouth, believe in your heart. So sometimes we get people to confess what they don't believe. So we kind of pressurize them a bit to say the sinner's prayer, but they're not believing that inside. Sometimes we don't get people to confess what they do believe. And what we want to do is to help people to confess what they believe. And that's what we want to look at in this session. So how on earth do we do it? Well, I think we've got to make sure that they've got a bit of a grasp of what it's about. They're not going to understand the ins and outs. When I said yes to Jesus at the age of 12, I didn't fully understand the ins and outs. I still don't fully understand the ins and outs, if I'm really, really honest. But I had a grasp. I knew roughly what I was doing. I knew that I was turning away, but I didn't understand it all. So let's not over-expect, but we want to be assured in our mind that a person has got a grasp of what they're doing, what the decision they're about to make. So, you remember, those of you who were there, that when we talked about sharing the gospel, that we've got to make sure we don't always just kind of try and tell everything and end up saying nothing. But I did hint back then that there was a time when we do need to make sure the person's fully understood the gospel, and that's this point. When we're leading them to Christ, we need to make sure that they understand the whole gospel. I'll explain a little bit more about that. So we want them to have a bit of a grasp about it, and then make sure they haven't been forced into it. Because premature birth is not helpful in the physical and in the spiritual. Sadly, I've met too many people who said, I've tried it before and it didn't work. And you've got to find out what they mean by they've tried it before and it didn't work. And often what has happened is they've been forced into making a decision. Do you mind if I just be slightly controversial for a few moments?
Yeah.
As in, yes, you do mind, or yes, be slightly controversial, or both.
Go ahead.
Well, go ahead. Thank you. That'll do. So okay. Right. So there's a bit of a thing at the moment, I may have touched on it, where people are going out into the streets and claiming that 250 people got saved. They use phrases like documented decisions, and I know where they've come from, but I know, because I've done a bit of research, this real research, that these people that have been saved on the streets, when they've been, people have tried to make contact with them afterwards, they've either discovered there were false numbers, or people have said, oh no, I'm not really interested anymore. And it's a thing that's called decisionism. And I'm really against that. I'm really against it. I don't deny that something was happening, that there was some authenticity, and that in years to come, some of those people, that might form part of their testimony. But I think we have to understand. And so that's why I'm not into this thing where you can just learn a script and get people to go through it. You know, like high pressure salesmen on the streets. I don't want to be like that, do you? I don't want to be like that. Because it's the Lord who's the Lord of the harvest, isn't it? Not us. So some people disagree with me, and I don't mind that. People want to be wrong. No, I don't mind. I don't mind. I'm big enough and ugly enough to cope with that. I'm just telling you what I've seen over 30 odd years of doing full-time evangelism, and I don't personally want to force anybody into becoming a Christian. So I believe in street evangelism. I believe in door-to-door evangelism. I became a Christian because somebody knocked on the door of my home, as I told you on one of these evenings. So I believe in that. But the most fruitful type of evangelism is where you and I journey with our friends. Because we know that when they do make a decision, we're there to follow through with it and to walk with them, so we know it's genuine, or if we force them. So I'm just mentioning that because we're covering it. So how do you know? How do you know whether a person's ready to become a Christian? Do you I don't know, do you seek the Lord over free? Well, I come with a really, really, really simple approach to it. And my simple approach to it is I ask them. What do you think? It's not a bad approach, is it? I ask them. And I want to, whilst I'm saying let's not force people into it, I am also saying to you, be bold. Be bold. If you've had a fantastic time of sharing with somebody and it's gone really, really well, invite them to become a Christian. Because if you don't, it's a little bit like you take me up to the best restaurant in Ely. You describe how amazing it is, how many times you personally dined there, and loved it and think everybody ought to do it, but then you don't take me in. That would be mean. So don't do that to me, ever. That would be mean. And sometimes we explain how amazing it is, the difference Jesus has made in our life, and we're engaging really well with something, it's going really well. And it's almost like we're saying, we're not thinking about that. So ask somebody, you've had a great conversation with them, you've been journeying with them over a while, and you sense that it's going well, and you feel, yeah, I think we've travelled somewhere, we've journeyed somewhere with each other. Maybe they've been to talk, an evangelistic talk. That might be a moment after that. Say, did you say that prayer that the guy said at the end? He didn't. Would you ever think about it? Or if you just had a really good one-on-one conversation, just say to them something along the lines of, do you want to become a Christian? Try it. And the thing is, like, if they say no, that's fine. Just chill out, relax. We almost fear rejection sometimes, but no, just relax. Our friend shared a little story just the other week of how she got praying and invited somebody to say yes to Jesus, and they did. Some people will, some people won't. That's fine. I think sometimes we've got to just chill out a little bit. Sometimes I think we can get a little bit intense when it comes to faith sharing, and sometimes it can be a bit fearful of people saying no. But let's just relax about it. You know, if I'm going to invite my friend out for a meal, I don't get stressed out if they say no. I think, well, set yourself so we just chill out. We chill out, invite them, that's fine. It's not the end of the thing. So if they say no, don't force anything, just give them some more information. And give the information that's appropriately sort of where we feel they are. So it might be that you give them a look closer or something like that, whatever resources that you've got. It might be that you give them that. It might be that they've got lots of questions, so you can give them something like, now that is a good answer. So, you know, like what can you give them? They've said no, but that doesn't mean they're not going to continue conversations. And let's remember, it's links in a chain. And we are a link in a chain, which I just find a real privilege. And how many times have you heard somebody share their testimony and it's gone something along the lines of, well, I wasn't really looking for God. And then I became really good friends with this person at work, and they were a Christian. Or you know, I had no time for anything, and then this happened in my life. Just started to make me think. And you hear, don't you, when people tell their testimonies, but it tends, does it not, to be lots of links in the chain along the way. So let's remember that. Let's remember the Holy Spirit works. He's really good at it. Really good at it. He's really good at just nibbling away at people. Going because we looked at with the Apostle. And if they say yes, pick yourself up off the floor because you fainted. Okay? Alright, pick yourself up, and then I give a number of things. I like to tell them what it means to be a Christian. I like to be really transparent and honest with them. So I tell them that it's not always going to be easy, and that it means a long-term commitment and a new way of living. Now, do it positively. Like I said, do you want to become a Christian? Yeah. Oh. It's really hard. It means a total change. It means all of that. Let's say it positively. So I'll say, if I said to you, want to become a Christian? Yeah, I would love that. I said, oh, do you know what? That's fantastic news. I'm so thrilled. Or as we say up north, I'm so chuffed. I'm so chuffed you want to give your life to Jesus. Because you know what? It's fantastic knowing that somebody's walking with you through life, because it's not always easy. But then again, life isn't always easy. I love that little bit in the Bible where I can't remember which of the, I think it's in one of the letters, where Paul's writing, he says, You live in the world, well, you can have tribulation. it's like, it's a matter of fact, it's like you're breathing, yeah, you can have troubles. so that's true, that just doesn't suddenly disappear, does it? The minute you become a Christian. So I like to say to people, look, it's not always easy, and I say things like, I just found it gave me a whole new outlook on life and a new way of living that was amazing. Yes, challenging, yes, hard, but a whole new way of living. And I've discovered that the longer I've stuck with it, the more I've got out of it, the more I understand about it. So definitely a longer term commitment's the best way with this. So you're talking about those things. So you're being transparent, you're being open, you're being honest, you let them know it's not going to be easy, that it's going to demand a change in direction. But we're saying it in positive and inspirational way. And then it's at this point that I then cover the basics of the gospel that I hinted at just a few moments ago. And so that again is why I wanted to learn these gospel points. And with those verses, particularly in this context, it's great that you can take people through these things. Now, I just want to make a little caveat to what I said earlier, because you're beginning to realise now that this is probably going to take quite a long time. And sometimes you might not have that amount of time, but the person says yes, and you get a real stirring. So you've just got to go for it in those instances and lead them to Christ, say a prayer with them, because you don't always have a chance to do this, because this could take 25, 30 minutes, can't it? Even more sometimes. So what I would say is, if you find yourself in a situation where you are leading somebody to Christ, you personally need to get in contact with them as soon as you can, maximum 2 or 3 days after, and go through this stuff with them retrospectively. Does that make sense? So you said, when you said that prayer to Jesus, what was happening? What did you understand? And take them through it, because you want to make sure that they understood what they were doing. So this is how I do that. So this is the gospel. God's plan, our problem, our God's solution, our response. You can do it with those Bible verses that we learned as well. Jeremiah 29:11 for God's plan. Remember that one? Then our problem, Isaiah 53 verse 6. Our reference, Ephesians 2:8-9. God's solution, John 3:16. And our response, John 1:12. So we want to take them through those, because what you're starting to do then is you're modeling something. You're starting to get them to read the Bible, just to start to apply it a bit for themselves. Really, really good. And you need to make sure that they've at least grasped the basic gospel at this point. That's really important. So this is how I do it. As I'm taking them through these points, I ask them a few questions. I'll say, does this make sense to you? God's plan, God's got a plan. That makes sense. When I say that to you, what's it made you do? What's it made you think? Just get into a little bit of a conversation with them, because what you're starting to get them to do is to explain and explore the scriptures, explain and explore the Bible principles. It's very basic Bible study, isn't it? That we're getting them to do. And let's face it, we're going to make disciples. But Bible study is a pretty critical part of this, let's face it. So you're starting to model something, starting to shape something with them. So yeah, does this make sense to you? Is this what you want to do? So when I talk about God's plan, does it make sense to you? And is this what you want to do? You want to follow God's plan for your life, because you know that your plan doesn't really work. And so you just doesn't have to be exactly these things, but you kind of just get a bit of a sense in your mind of where they're at, because you might be like, okay, just need to be a little bit fuzzy on that. We can go forward, but I just need to help them to understand that more going forward. Now, sometimes when people have been asked these questions, you might find they're saying no, because it's spiritual matter. And also, as we looked at one of the weeks, and I've forgotten which one it was because I've slept since those, but on one of the weeks we looked at the spiritual dynamic at work, but there's also a human dynamic at work, because change is one of those things that you go backwards and forwards with, isn't it? You're going to leave a job, even though you need to get out of this job. You've been there for 10 years. There's a little bit of
familiarity with it, security with it, that's the word I was looking for, and you're going into something new, and you say, oh, am I doing the right thing? Should I get that help? Should we just stay where we are? Should I take that can't find the payment out, stick with my banner that I've got? You know, you go through all these things, don't you? That's normal when you're making a big decision. That's not a spiritual thing, that's just humanity. But use the human side and the spiritual side, and don't be surprised then if you do one, and then when you go through this big thing, not quite so sure. My friend Dave Forward, who's now a pastor of a church, he became a Christian on a Friday night, woke up Saturday morning and thought, what have I done? And actually, I don't even know what happened theologically with this, but he said, dear God, I'm taking it back. You know, I don't know what happens there. There's not been many books written on that one, has there? You know, I mean, that's got to be the quickest backsliding ever on planet Earth. Or you'll be pleased to know he did finally give his life back to Jesus, and now, as I say, he's pastoring a church. So don't be surprised, as I mentioned previously, that you've gone a really good journey with something, you go, I want to become Christian. And then when you start to explore it even more, then maybe going, oh no, that's fine, it's all part of it. If they say yes, lead them in a prayer. Now, let me explain what I mean by lead them in a prayer. Not many people these days are used to praying. But if you go back a couple of decades ago, you know, might have got a few more people going to church. They might have said the Lord's Prayer. Go back a few more years before that, they might have said prayers in school. But not many people pray now. And so I think you've got to be really careful in this bit, how you get people to pray. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through these bits and I'm going to show you how I do it, because I think that's the best thing. But when we get into prayer, we want them to be praying around this sort of thing. Lord, I know I've left you out of my life. I know I've done much wrong in my life. Thank you for the death of your son for me. I receive your forgiveness. I turn away from living life without you. I want to live life your way. Now, there's no religious word in there. I'm not getting them to say I repent for all my sins and renounce the devil. Okay, because that's just so religious. They haven't got a clue what that's about. It's used normal words. So this is what I think the prayer needs to include. How we do that prayer will differ in different circumstances. So sometimes in a church service, I might do what you would classically see as an evangelist leading people in a prayer for salvation. And that's because they've been in a service, prayers have been happening, so it's congruous, isn't it, with the service? Okay, if I'm leading a person to Christ on a one-on-one, to suddenly get them to pray out loud, it's incongruous with that situation, because lots of people just aren't used to saying prayers. So this is what I do. I want you to just imagine I'm in a situation, I've gone through all this bit, and you still want to become a Christian, then I'll say something like, it's really great that you want to give your life to Jesus, that you want to become a Christian. There's a couple of ways you can do it. I could help you do that now, or you could go away and do it on your own. But if you do it on your own, I'll give you something to help you do that, and then would you let me know that you've done it so that I can help you? Okay? That's one approach, and that's fine. The other approach is I could help you to do that now, and so you can still give the option to the other person. No, I'd like to do that now. I said, that's fantastic. I'd love to help you do that. So this is what I'm going to do. In a moment, I'm going to get you to say two simple words. You can either say them out loud, or you can say them privately, inside. And those two words are, yes, God. Yes, God. Let me tell you now what yes, God means. Saying yes to God means, and then I'll take them through Those little phrases that I just said there. So I said, saying yes to God means you're saying, do you know, God, I don't want to live my life without you anymore. I want to live it with you. Saying yes to God means that he's saying, God, I know I've done things wrong in my life. Saying yes to God means that he's saying, God, thank you for death of your son for me. I'm receiving forgiveness. Saying yes to God means that he's saying, with your help, God, I'm going to turn away from doing life my own way and walking my own way. I'm going to do a U-turn. With your help, I'm going to start living life your way. Is that what you want to say to God? Yeah. Just say it to God. You can do it out loud or in the stillness and quietness of your own heart. How would you like to do it? Do it together. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Here's the important thing. Not how long your prayer was, but that if you said yes, God, and you meant it, then you've made a very real decision to follow real God, and you started that next phase, what it means to become a Christian. And I based that on Romans 10:9. Confess with your mouth that Jesus Lord, believe in your heart, but face with the dead, you shall be saved. So can you see how that's a little bit more natural, isn't it? It's a little bit more conversational, rather than coming into some kind of religious formulated thing. And listen, there's nothing wrong with the prayers, the prayers that we say, but let's not fool ourselves and think that that model that's been used for a couple of 100 years is a biblical model. It's not particularly. It's the response that's the important thing. Okay, so let's understand that. That's the critical thing. How do we get people to do that? That might vary in different contexts. Now, you might find that you can. So for example, my daughter Natalie, her friends been coming along to youth group. I shared this story with them with one of the sessions, and she's been coming along to youth alpha, and she prayed a prayer before we'd even known she'd become a Christian. And so obviously when you're leading her to Christ, you're more likely to be able to say a prayer because it's something that's a bit more true to who she is and a bit more that she's used to. That makes sense? Yes, lovely.
Sorry,
Speak up for them.
okay. Just wanted to make sure one thing.
Yeah.
I use it for 9:10.
Yeah.
And I thought the scripture said if you confess as rather than confess the sins and then accept according to scripture. So I'm saying now that basically kind of the little bit away and just asking to say yes, Lord.
So it's not, there's no direct command for people to say the sinner's prayer. So Romans 10 verse 9 says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord, and believe in your heart that raised from the dead, you shall be saved. So for me, the critical thing is that they're just saying yes to God. Yeah, yes, God. But because you explain what it means to say yes to God, that saying yes to God means just saying yes to God. I don't want to live life anymore. I don't want to live life. Because we take them through that, then as we explained, they were capturing all of us and saying, yes, God, yes, God, that makes sense. Well, thank you for asking, it's important to make sure we've got clarity. Okay, so basically what we're doing is we're presenting the gospel, we're discussing the gospel, and then we're getting them to pray the gospel in some form or another. And I think that's a really, really powerful thing. We're going to break for our hot tasty beverage. The keen and emotion will notice that we have finished a little bit later, but I don't want you thinking you're not going to get your standard 10 minutes. It's a deliberate thing. That's because this section was a little bit longer, but more important that we didn't have a break. I just want to say one final thing on this, and that'll take us to 5, and then we'll be back by 5 past, and then we'll finish off this evening's subject, and you'll all be getting away for the evening. So one of the reasons for why when I'm doing an evangelistic appeal, I give people an opportunity to say a big yes to God, which is the sinner's prayer stuff. And when we've done that, I move on to inviting people to say a little yes if they want to commit to exploring because they're not ready to receive Christ. Or I challenge them to become a healthy maybe and say I'm a healthy maybe. If they're not even ready to fully explore and investigate, is precisely because I think there's two things about that Romans 10:9 verse. There's the primary application, which is the raw fact, so that you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart and raised and that you shall be saved. But I think there's a secondary element to that suggests there's power in declaring something. You have power in speaking something. And when I first started doing Biggest Study as Healthy Maybe, when the Lord first developed that language in me, and I invited people to come and see me at the end of this particular evangelistic service and said that you're big, yes, look, yes, all right, maybe I'd love to meet you and help you. And I saw more people respond to the gospel that night than ever, both in terms of those saying yes to Christ, becoming a Christian. But I had non-Christians coming up to me saying, oh, definitely a little yes. Or I'm a healthy maybe, but I'd like to get to it. And I don't know how. And so I think there's power in that as well. In somebody saying, this is where I recognize I am on this whole journey. And that's why I think giving a language for people to respond is helpful for that people, for that person. But also it's really encouraging, isn't it? If somebody's come along who's come an atheist and then gone away saying, I'm open-minded, it's massive, eh? It's massive, and we want to be able to celebrate that. Okay, hot, tasty beverage, shops open for 10 minutes in between the beverage, and then it'll be open at the end again. So see you in about